Welcome back to Turpentine VC, a podcast where we discuss the art and science of building successful venture firms, VC to VC. For today's episode, we have Alexis Ohanian. Alexis co-founded Reddit in 2005, helped lead its turnaround in 2014, and was a partner at Y Combinator. In 2011, he co-founded Initialized Capital with Gary Tan. Initialized split into two firms in 2020, leading to the formation of Alexis's newest venture, 776. We discuss how 776 is a tech company that deploys venture capital, the lack of internal metrics in venture, why the firm has never lost a term sheet, future functionalities that will enhance the 776 product, and much more. Here's our conversation. Alexis, welcome to the podcast. I'm stoked to chat with you about 776.
Thank you, Erik. I'm hyped. Let's talk. We got, you can ask me anything, as we say on Reddit.
Perfect. Well, let's get in the weeds. So while you were at Initialized, you had one of the most successful runs of any a fund with your beginning fund. And so let's talk about 776 in terms of why started in a very crowded market, lots of other great firms, storied firms that have been on this podcast. What did you sort of notice was the gap in the market, or think about, hey, where did you want 776 to play, given all the other funds out there?
So started Initialized with Gary, back in 2012, and admittedly had no idea what we were doing. $7 million fund. You referenced the marks there. We've done pretty well there, and subsequent funds are also tracking quite well. And so imagine, it's now 2020, so 8 years in, and I had just come back from Reddit. So I'd gone back as chairman in 2014, right at the end of that year, to help lead the turnaround. That's where I met Caitlin and Lizzie, who would go on to join me at Initialized. And then when we split that firm to start 776. And so I just come out of operator mode, right? Reddit was an $8 million a year revenue business in 2014. That's public knowledge. There was a TechCrunch article about it. It was a 10-year-old company making $8 million a year and had a lot of issues, a lot of challenges. And, 4 years later, was doing around 150 mil, $1 billion plus valuation, and team did a hell of a job. And I saw firsthand, learned a ton from Caitlin about what it took to create a high-performing tech company, not just like making a cool product people liked, but then scaling that and growing that and making a real business. And so when I came back to Initialize full-time, I was investing during that period, but I wasn't operating. Gary was operating and really running the firm and hiring and everything. And, I found a venture fund that I had co-founded, but one that ultimately wasn't in the vision of what I thought venture could be. And having done one turnaround already with Reddit, that's where I got all of my gray hair, I ultimately just didn't want to do that again. And there was it's always tricky with equal co-founders, because you have literally this was 50-50 between Gary and I. And ultimately I just said, look, like, the best thing I can do here is just split this firm. And I will do everything I can to make sure that Initialized is intact and, we get a fund done and everything's great going forward. But I'm going to take the folks with me who I know can see this vision I see and can run at the speed I want to run, et cetera, and start 776. And so 3 years into that experiment now, the North Star, to actually answer your question, was, okay, I know how to do early stage investing, right? Done that pretty well. I know how to build $1 billion tech company. But what happens if we take much of the approach of building a technology company and apply that to VC? So what if we say all the time, we're a tech company that deploys venture capital? What does that mean? I'm the product guy. I obviously Reddit is the first thing I designed, but I spent all my time, or a lot of my time, thinking about and designing product to run all parts of our firm. That's Cerebro. And Caitlin is the people expert who spends a disproportionate amount of her time thinking about how we build a performance culture, how we create an environment for our founders so that they can be incredibly successful, how we build, metrics into the work that we do. Early stage venture is hard because you don't really know you're doing a good job until 8, 9, 10 years later when you actually get DPI. So how do you develop talent in an environment where most people, if you ask most GPs at most venture funds, like, what is your team doing this quarter? They don't know. And think about that, right? Like there's no way we turn around Reddit if we don't know every quarter what our sales team is doing, what our engineering team is doing. If we don't have metrics, if we don't have alignment, even the people and culture parts of a business have ways to quantify a job well done. Why is venture the one industry where that is non-existent? It's not like we're that special. And the answer is because, one, I don't think the culture has ever been there. And you have to have a certain amount of will to want that. And then two, you have to be willing to build the technology that creates that kind of scoreboard. And not everyone likes a scoreboard. I've always been on the sales side and the business side, in addition to the product side, where you just have metrics, right? Either you have 30-day retention, you have, lead conversion rates and dollars generated in a quarter. Like you cannot escape numbers and data. And it was always so wild to me in building Initialized that like somehow that isn't a part of the culture of venture. And so we wanted 776 to be a firm that had that, front and center.
It's fascinating as VCs. If we, we're investing in our own businesses, we wouldn't give ourselves advice like, hey, don't have a CEO or, operate in the same way that the business is operated, that the industry has operated for the last few decades, right? And so you're trying to take the sort of founder approach of reinventing the category using software. I love that.
I mean, it's nuts, right? Like even the folks who say that they use software, and I've been trying to coach up our LPs, right? Even the folks that say they use software, I say, okay, the next question you need to ask them is, what are usage rates? Like, okay, yes, you have software. How important is that software? How are you measuring? Is it daily active usage? Is it time spent? Is it, if it's a tool for your team, like, do they actually need to do this every day? Right. The canonical questions of like, how upset would you be if this disappeared tomorrow? That is a obvious follow-up question in our business. If you're getting a pitch and a founder is telling you, oh, they love our product. Imagine if we as early stage VCs said, oh, great. Okay. Sounds good. Thanks. No, and yet every single one of us is let off the hook. Even if we have that pitch of, oh yeah, no, software is really important, how we scale what our team does, just because poor LPs don't know. And I've actually gotten so fanatical with it. We're actually relaunching. By the time this podcast comes out, if you go to 776.com, you will actually see a real-time feed of all of the data of really what we've done for our founders in the last 365 days. Actually, here, I can show you it's on staging. So this data is not real, but you get a sense. So like literally at a moment's notice, anyone in the world can see, okay, in the last 365 days, how many tasks have we done? There's typos in here. This is,
sure.
How many pitch meetings have we organized? How many intros have we made using our tools? How many times have founders, drafted tweets for us that we posted or searched our network or messaged us? Our median response time to their chat messages. I mean, this stuff is cruel to put on the front door because now any founder of note has the receipt. Now they can say, okay, well, here's a metric, here's a bar. Every other venture firm has the same website, which says the same thing, which is we're value add, and here's the things we do. Bring the receipts. Let's go. Like, please, I want to know, is our average response time faster than our peers? I don't know, because nobody else has the courage, the fortitude to track it, let alone publicly report it. And part of this was personal, Erik, because I had folks, I was a lowercase c celebrity, for creating Reddit just within the tech community. And then, 7 years ago, I started dating my now wife, Serena, who's obviously a worldwide icon. And I heard over those years, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly, that founders would be warned, well, gosh, I hope you can get some of his time. That guy, he's out there. You see, he's posting on social. This was before every VC wanted to be a content creator. And I'd have to answer questions from LPs of like, do you really think you need to be posting so much on social? Like, do you really think you need to be building an audience there? Obviously, the tide has shifted a little bit 10 years later. But back then, one of the biggest criticisms or sort of digs was that, this guy is busy doing his like quasi celebrity thing and he's not that serious. And I think the problem is too, I have too jolly of a demeanor. And so it's one of these things where for years in so many roles, I just wish there were a scoreboard. And a couple of years into 776, I'm like, why am I hiding this? Like, we share this with our founders. They see all these metrics. They see this accountability. They get an automatically generated report every quarter recapping what our firm has done for them. But I'm like, no, let's just put this on the front door. Like, why not? I don't care. And there's actually an Easter egg where if you click through, you can actually see just my statistics. So this is the aggregate of the firm. There's 12 of us. Everyone uses this all day, Cerebro. But you can just see my stats. So you can see my average response time to founders. You can see my median response time. Like, please, because I realized only in the last few years that the missing link for me personally in my own weird ways was just never having a scoreboard and some way of saying like, let's go, like talk whatever you want to talk, but bring some numbers. And there's a reason, Erik. It's awkward, man. We're 3 years in. We're 100% on term sheets. Now it will obviously at some point we're going to lose a term sheet. And that's not paying the most. Okay. There are plenty of times. Our most recent deal, we were right in the middle of the pack actually on valuation. We've never lost a term sheet. And it doesn't matter if I'm sending it, if one of the other partners are 100%. And my hunch is if we can continue to do it this way, I think it forces a lot of the folks in the messy middle. You're talking to folks who are doing, the tier one legacy firms who manage billions and billions and millions of dollars, who are the brand names we all know. They're not going away anytime soon. Thankfully, they also don't have an edge at early stage, but they're not going away. They're going to keep thriving. Okay. But there's a messy middle of a whole lot of folks, zombie venture funds that don't have any leadership, that don't have anyone really checked in. There's a lot of folks who I think we're going to see start to roll over, and that's fine. I'll send them a retirement watch. God bless. It's just founders are hungry for the same accountability, frankly, that the free market expects of them, and that we as investors expect of them. So it's coming. Change is coming, Erik.
Yeah, no, I love the tracking and then the sharing, because even in our industry, we don't even share outputs. People don't even share returns. Firms have been around for 20 years. Nobody knows how they, or the public doesn't know how they've been doing. The people in the know how they've been doing. And what you're doing is you're tracking and sharing inputs, which is great, because outputs take a decade to, or more to emerge. So I like that a lot. I want to zoom out a bit and just talk about this idea of software and VC is really interesting. People have tried it in different ways, right? Some people have tried sourcing, because it's a question of like, how do you even deploy it? Where can you get leverage? Is it sourcing? Is it evaluating? Is it supporting? Why don't you explain kind of the idea maze of how you thought about, hey, I want to build a tech company that invests. What are the different things that you explored or tried, or how did you end up on Cerebro? And then let's get into exactly what that is, how it works.
Look, it was certainly informed by I was in the first batch of YC where there was nothing, right? It was just very sort of haphazardly put together. But then the first bit of software Paul built was allowing people to schedule office hours with founders. And that was when I was a partner. So I was on that side of it. I saw how helpful it was, sort of a rudimentary CRM. Took those learnings into Initialized. And as we built that firm, we wanted to build that software. And we built a sort of V2, I'd say, sort of the next iteration of that, basically a CRM. But the thing that I realized was it wasn't until I actually queried the database and saw just how disproportionate the amount of work was, where I was like, holy cow, like I actually had no idea just how much time I was spending with our founders relative to other folks. But then also, as a manager, how do you develop a performance culture? How do you give feedback? How do you do this stuff if you don't actually know where folks are spending their time? And this was where, again, there's no way you build a multi-billion-dollar company not having that kind of performance culture. And so then I come back and I'm like, wait, hold on. Like, this is, we've just crack the surface of what you could do if you built software from day one and then built a performance culture around that. And what does that mean? That means there's transparency about output. There's accountability to one another. There's accountability to founders. There's goal setting. There are things that, like, again, some people don't like this at all, right? Because this is a very different mindset for venture. But other people, thankfully the ones we've been able to attract, love it. And it turns out high performers love this. High performers love this feedback. They love knowing, okay, in the last 2 weeks, where did I spend most of my time? And was that aligned with my expectations for how I wanted to spend it? And that could be cut. That's cut. And again, because this is a full operating system, that's cut a few different ways. We can look at, right, were we spending our time between founders, internal team, third parties, and LPs? That's interesting. Gosh, I thought I was in fundraising mode right now. Why am I not spending nearly as many hours as I would have expected to be? But then it goes a step further, which is, okay, let's just look in the portfolio. You know, every investor segments out their portfolio based on, you know, say sort of rocket ship, like the folks who are doing really, really well, high conviction, going to return the fund, all the way down to the ones that are adrift. Now you're looking at your portfolio. Where did you spend your last 2 weeks or your last month or your last quarter? Are you spending it in the right parts of the portfolio based on their segmentation? The only way you actually can tell is if you are tracking it and if you are having those hard, sometimes, conversations among the team to say, hey, hold on. We said we expected to spend 50% of our time with founders that are in this section. We had 10% last quarter. What happened? Or, you know, it's hard enough. And I'm speaking for myself here, right? These are the tools I wanted my whole career because I want to know, my God, like this founder is taking up a disproportionate amount of time relative to others. And the ROI of that time, I'm still 24 hours in a day. If anyone has solved that problem, let me know. But I'm still hamstrung by that. And if I can build these tools that better help me adjust my day, I know they will help everyone on the squad and us as a team to better understand. And that is the simplest version of how we think about it. But when we think about then the tools we built for our founders, I literally went to all the billion-dollar CEOs that I had seeded. And I said, what were the things that were most valuable that I did for you over the last 7, 8, 9 years? And I took that list. And then, like any good product designer, I just resorted it based on frequency of mention and ease of building. And the number one thing was network and intros. They said, Alexis, your network is unmatched. Your ability to land successful intros, unparalleled. That was amazing. And I'm sitting here going, okay, well, what is that? That's a database. And letting you search my brain, a database, is way better than actually getting on a phone and being like, hey, Alexis, do you know someone at Twitter? Right? Database is really good for those queries. My brain, terrible at it. So that was the first product in Cerebro, was just simply a network search. And that was pulling my personal CRM, which I obsessively kept for most of my career. That was about 40,000 contacts. And then another 15, 20 from LinkedIn that I aggressively exported. And put those together, make them searchable, click a button, request an intro, draft the email, boom. So that was the first version back in 2020. And again, it was just based on talking to my customers, and not just any, but the best ones, right? It's a power law business. So when 24 billion-dollar company CEOs who I seeded say that this is important, that's who I'm building for. And we've expanded from that to the point now where, once a company gets in our CRM, through an email, through an intro, through a LinkedIn message, who knows, we have software to handle that flow. So the deal flow, everything through the pitch meeting, how we're, feedback, we're sort of ranking, rating. This is to exercise the muscles of partners and folks on the team to just get better. And I'll tell you a specific way we do that, because intuition is so important early stage. If a company, I think this is all software, if pitch company becomes Portco, then 6 months after the pitch, we actually ask everyone who's in that meeting the same sort of characteristic questions about the founders. So effective communicator is one of the ones that we rank 1 to 5. And we ask them, we don't show them how they ranked them 6 months earlier, but we ask them again, and then they rank them and put a little context. And then we show them how they decided based on those initial pitch meetings. And what's fun there is you're now, once you're 6 months into a founder, you actually kind of know what you got. And you could have someone who is amazing at a pitch and they're great in a pitch setting, but, terrible at communicating to you as investors, maybe problems communicating with their co-founders. Like we know that's an important attribute of a great CEO, being able to sort of speak clearly and thoughtfully and with conviction. But intuition is how you can kind of tell, even in those handful of pitch meetings, that like, yeah, it's there, but I asked the right question. I get the slightly defensive answer, and that's a tell that you actually probably struggle outside of this pitch. But how do you learn that? Unless you get it wrong, and then you can catch yourself 6 months later to be like, oh my God, I got this so wrong. And then what do I learn? Building an organization, I can start to see with some data, it's limited, but at least some data, who has better instincts on this stuff. And this was inspired by a meme from YC. PG always used to call Jess a social radar, because, that early YC group, it was Paul, Trevor, and Robert. Not the most high EQ people. I think they would admit that. Not the highest EQ folks. But Jess came in with a lot of EQ, and it was like, oh my God, she's telling us who's a decent human. And so I that always stuck with me, because I'm like, okay, there are more nuanced ways to actually start to learn a lot of this stuff. And if you're building software in through this and you're building it with the intention of helping develop and give feedback, you can do a lot more. Anyway, it goes through the process. And then once they are in the portfolio, then it's about building their journey and building the relationship with us. And, the iOS app exists because we're an RIA, and I need all the messages to happen in one single place, which is helpful, which is in Cerebro. We even show people, again, this is how, I'm nuts. Any founder who's chatting with us, okay, I could feel the clock ticking in my head where it's like, I need to respond quickly. So this one's fine. Okay, there's nothing naughty there. Okay, so here's a founder, and you see at the top of her chat, she can see our median and average response times to her. Now, every founder sees that, and that's like 101 customer support, right? You'll get a response within 6 minutes. It's busy right now, blah, blah. But this is the founder knowing that we have such accountability to them. And this is also fun because then, again, it's on the front door. I can tell you my average and median response time to every single founder. And again, it's just reiterating like, wow, okay, like they're here for me. It's creating this kind of, I want to create this feeling for founders that this is the bad phone and this is what they can use for needs. And so, sometimes it's like, hey, look at this great thing that happened. And sometimes it's like, hey, do you know blah, blah, blah? And like, I need some more color here. And the Cerebro entry didn't give me enough, juice. Can we talk? Like it's creating that ongoing relationship, which is so important. And then now in the last year, we've started building more and more tools to actually help scale the things that matter most to our founders. And the biggest one, which is I think where you're driving and you're in the right direction here, is on distribution, where like, yeah, it's useful that we have millions of followers across my channels, my teams, and the firms. But, for an early stage company, being able to actually use that to say, hey, we just launched a new, version of our app and here's the cool stuff, check it out. Or, hey, we just landed this big deal. Hey, check it out. Amplifying the content that they want us to talk about is very valuable, because you're talking about millions of impressions basically for free for minimal work. So we built out this Amplify tool, which is essentially like a ghostwriting tool, not too dissimilar from like a Typeflee or Hootsuite back in the day, so that founders can actually draft tweet storms, LinkedIn posts, IG posts, all this that then get approved, edited and approved by us and then shoved out on our accounts on their schedule. So we have our own content team. They're using these tools to create the actual like 776 content that we're putting out in the world. But then a founder can wake up at 2 a.m. and be like, oh, right, we're launching here tomorrow. Make sure to please amplify it. Cool. And it's been wild to see. There's probably 10 companies in the portfolio. Obviously, we have a leaderboard. There's 10 companies that are just ripping it. And what they all have in common is they all have excellent social content discipline. Like it's in their DNA. Intro is the best one. You've probably seen intro stuff bubbling around. They're so effing good. And their head of social realizes, hold on, all my OKRs are geared towards signups and growth and all these things. And now here is another tool in my toolkit that literally no other investor on the planet has ever created that I will get to use. And that's been the hardest part, is actually now educating founders about these things that they just don't expect, because there is no precedent. And it's a great problem to have. But the difference between the 10 who have just instantly gotten it and are using it regularly versus the other like 50 that should be and like have tried a little bit here and there. I mean, these are good. These are all product challenges that, I get to now improve. But this is where we want to go. I want to scale my time. I want to scale the team's time, and be able to focus on the human parts of this job that are so much more important than, coming up with the blank screen of being like, okay, how do I get this tweet started? And obviously we're using AI to help with that too. Shameless plug for the AI revolution.
We'll get into that in a bit. But just to make sure I captured it, my understanding of Cerebro is, from what you said, is it's basically a tool for your founders to get access to your network and your distribution in a systemized, efficient, effective way, and also for them and you to track the work that you were doing, the response time, so that they have sort of the confidence that you'll get back to them, that you'll be helpful. They know exactly what you're doing for them, also your portfolio. And then it's also an internal tool for you to be able to run your firm better, to learn from your decisions, to learn how your team is operating. Did I miss anything there?
Yes. I mean, it could. I for the last AGM, we do all our AGMs async. I recorded a 22-minute, and I was pretty crisp, but a 22-minute demo. So that's obviously probably the most boring thing I could do right now. But like, this is an example of the quarterly investor update or founder investor update that our founders get.
Cool.
And it's just, right. It's, whether it's intros 1-to-1, intros at scale, that's our campaign tool.
Yep.
Social posts through the Amplify tool. And then all the other stuff every VC does of like, events and workshops and all that stuff. Like, it's an operating system for a VC fund.
Yeah.
And I think I'm still so embarrassed by it, and it needs to get so much better, but we're tracking in a way that's exciting, because I have yet, there's no founder out here that's like, oh, have you seen blah, blah, blah by blah, blah venture firm?
Right. Yeah. No, you're pioneering here.
Because there just isn't. And it's weird, because like creating Reddit, I had to hear about Dig every fucking day. Every day. How are you different from Dig? How are you going to beat Dig? Why are you better than Dig? Why do you even exist? There's already Dig. And so it's weird. Now, obviously we buried Dig, 5 years later, but it like for 4 or 5 years, it was incessant. And then this is just weird because there isn't, there's no Goliath from a product standpoint. And so we're not any less motivated. It's just weird.
A couple years from now, where do you expect, like, what use cases or functionality have you not yet built in that you think could be a big opportunity? Like, where do you see it going? What's next for it?
So if we look at the roadmap right now, has probably 2/3 of it is founder tooling. And I'd say there's some stuff which I wouldn't be surprised. Okay. There's every bit of it we can level up. We should be leveling up. There are other parts of it that have kind of arrived organically that are very interesting to me. So I'll give you an example. Like we didn't have a community 3 years ago because we didn't exist. Now that 3 years have gone by, we're super intentional about, because we're remote first, we're super intentional. We bring people away from their homes to come in person. Like it's a high quality event, and our team does an amazing job making sure like it's worth everyone's time. That's so important to me. I got 2 kids. I'd rather be home with them 99% of the time, or I don't know, playing Call of Duty with my boys. Like that, like it needs to count to get folks out. And so now that we've started to intentionally build this community, that's been one area where folks have really asked for more, to just better know how to connect with one another. That on the one hand is as simple as messaging. Obviously, I reproduced a type of very similar to Reddit forum called the Agora, which is for one-to-many community stuff. That's nothing as the Reddit guy. That's nothing new. But thinking about, okay, how do we create more serendipity as our founder community gets bigger that allow for these high value moments to happen between our founders? Now that, like, for instance, so I can give you a little of an idea. Now that like WeWork is it bankrupt now? I think there's an amazing opportunity here to reimagine what we'd call it Agora IRL. So the Agora is what we call our sort of Reddit-like tool online. The Agora in ancient Greece was like the place where all people would get together. It was like a market. It was like where you'd go to vote. It was like the town square in ancient Greece. And we have that Agora digitally, but I've talked a lot about doing an Agora IRL where we reimagine what our offices would look like from first principles. And we say, okay, commercial real estate, quite affordable right now. We find some modest, dope spaces in New York, LA, San Francisco, probably Miami. And we create, WeWork did get some things right, but imagine a space, not that scale, but a place with large benches, powered by Envoy, shameless plug of a seed investment I made, where you can rent out meeting rooms, hot desks, there's some good coffee. And most importantly, that all the other humans who are there are either on the team of 776 in the founder community or like allies of the firm. So it's all good. It's high quality humans, right? You go to WeWork, the Reddit had a New York WeWork office, right after I came back, and I got us out of there as soon as possible because the more time you spent there, like the worse the company was going to do, just because it didn't really attract high performing founders. And so imagine that, right? You have this Cerebro app now is also your key card to get in to your 776 Agora. So if you're in town, if I'm traveling to LA, if anyone on the team is, now you have a place to go where you can work, and it's going to be worth the time of being there because all the other humans are similarly motivated to just be doing dope stuff. So like there's interesting ways we can start to layer on now that we actually have scale of community and founders are asking us for this. That again, I'm not trying to actually start another WeWork, but I'm trying to think through, like, for a firm that doesn't have offices, I do think there is value to coming together as long as it counts. And so how do we build that in a way that makes sense with technology and our culture? So get ready for Agora's IRL. Maybe next year.
Hey, we'll continue our interview in a moment after a word from our sponsors. If you're a startup founder or executive running a growing business, you know that as you scale, your systems break down and the cracks start to show. If this resonates with you, there are 3 numbers you need to know: 36,000, 25, and 1. 36,000. That's the number of businesses which have upgraded to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, streamline accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, and more. 25. NetSuite turns 25 this year. That's 25 years of helping businesses do more with less, close their books in days, not weeks, and drive down costs. 1, because your business is one of a kind, so you get a customized solution for all your KPIs in one efficient system with one source of truth. Manage risk, get reliable forecasts, and improve margins. Everything you need all in one place. Right now, download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist, designed to give you consistently excellent performance, absolutely free, at netsuite.com/turpentine. That's netsuite.com/turpentine to get your own KPI checklist. netsuite.com/turpentine. Real quick, what's the easiest choice you can make? Taking the window instead of the middle seat, outsourcing business tasks that you absolutely hate. What about selling with Shopify? Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US, and Shopify is the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Whether you're selling security systems or marketing memory modules, Shopify helps you sell everywhere, from their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system. Wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. I've used it in the past at the companies I've founded, and when we launch merch here at Turpentine, Shopify will be our go-to. Shopify helps turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout, up to 36% better compared to other leading commerce platforms. And Shopify helps you sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. With Shopify Magic, whip up captivating content that converts from blog posts to product descriptions. Generate instant FAQ answers. Pick the perfect email send time. Plus, Shopify Magic is free for every Shopify seller. Businesses that grow, grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/momentofzen. Go to shopify.com/momentofzen now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/momentofzen.
I love that. It's a really interesting idea. I love that you think about how to differentiate on how the venture firm operates itself, because normally when emerging managers or new funds come to market, they either don't differentiate or they maybe think about different, like specializing in a certain sector or something, but they don't really think about, hey, how does the VC firm run and how can we reimagine it for what the world looks like, in 2023, 2024.
This is not going to be a fun job in the next few years, right? VC, I think for a lot of folks became a fun job that they could look forward to, or like almost like a quasi-retirement. And I'm so excited. Like I'm a really weird individual, right? I'm 40 years old. I feel more motivated than I did at 20 starting Reddit. Like I am licking my chops about how much change is going to come to this industry. And it's already starting, but in these coming years, right, in a higher interest rate environment, in a place where there's a lot of transition that needed to happen, there was a lot of fat that needed to get, trimmed in these funds and in the ecosystem, and that was part of the reason we leaned into becoming a registered investment advisor, right? I had every LP was like, "That's dope." They're like, "That's great," because for them, it's all upside, right? And a couple though were like, but why would you do that? Like venture capital is that's the Wild West. That's part of the fun. You don't have to get audited by the SEC. Like why on earth would you take on more operational work? And again, what really helped was having a founding partner like Caitlin, who, because of her people and culture expertise on the executive side and the operational side, like she likes that stuff. It's very much in her wheelhouse. And by doing it early, it's way easier than trying to do it way later, because you have all your practices, you have all your culture, all that stuff is ossified, and then you're trying to revamp everything. That's where the pain is. So you do it early, and part of the bet was, I do think venture is going to have to, and I won't name names, but there were some firms that made some pretty bad and public calls. And look, that's part of the job where we have to take big swings. But then when you start getting under the hood and being like, where was the diligence? Where was this or that? And I'm knocking on wood here. Like, that hasn't happened to me, but I look at this and I think, okay, well, more operational rigor is a good thing, especially in this line of work. We manage just under $1 billion now, and 9.3% of it is my money. So like, I'm like, this is my kids, this is my grandkids. Like I more rigor sounds great to me. And I think having that alignment with LPs is also, now look, I'm very lucky. Thankfully I had a lot of liquidity events, and we'll see what happens with this Reddit IPO. But like I'm in a place now where most, new fund managers don't get to be, because they don't have the track record or the capital, but I'm going to take full advantage of it. Are you kidding? Of course. Like I've got as much. There's probably only a handful of anchor LPs who've actually put more money in, because these are, big institutions, but like, that's the kind of alignment I want. And I don't know, I feel very, very fortunate, because the dozen folks we have here around the table are motivated by it, and all come from operator backgrounds. So they're also thinking about it with a kind of naivete that's helpful, because, doing something because the way it's always been done should never be the place where you start and end a conversation.
Totally. So we have a sense for how you guys operate. You're using software. Let's get more of a sense for how you think about fund size and where you fit into the market, right? We have a sense for what Benchmark does, right? Sort of 5 equal partners, $450 million fund size, or whatever their fund size is, and that very concentrated, Series A, Series B checks. We have a sense for how A16Z operates, right? Massive staff, massive AUM, all stages, kind of this really big aggregator. Have a sense for how Founders Fund operates. What's our mental model for how 776 thinks about fund size, portfolio construction, et cetera, place of market?
So pre-seed to Series A, we're even doing incubations now too. Love early stage. Seed's the bulk of it though. But I do think incubations are going to get some more love. And for us, it's actually a little unfair because, okay, founded Reddit, cool. But we also have deep people expertise. And so when you are incubating, practically speaking, what's one of the first things you're doing, right? Finding the right people to build out for that team. And so I think we're uniquely positioned for a few reasons there. But you can think of us, like I said, early stage from idea to Series A. I am technically the sole GP when it comes to the ass on the line and the legal docs. But all four of us, that includes my three other partners, source deals, lead deals, run deals. And it just so happens, Caitlin, Christina, and then Chris are at different sort of experience levels as investors. Caitlin's already got a couple of angel investments that are billion-dollar companies like Lattice. And she's got a few heaters from the first fund. They're already tracking well. One of the things I really wanted to make sure we nailed at 776 was I talked about that performance culture, having an environment where folks are getting consistent feedback to understand how to be better as investors. I know I am decades away from hanging it up. I'm not going anywhere. But I already want to be thinking about succession because I think that's an area where plenty of venture firms have struggled and where it's part of the reason you have these zombie VC firms running around because the founders are gone and no one else has a track record or knows what they're doing. And it's tough. I already want to make sure we have this kind of development process for all the partners as we go because it only helps the firm more for them to develop their reputations as great early investors, as great helpers of companies, et cetera. So it looks and feels a lot more, I don't know if collaborative is the right word, but I want to keep that energy while still having a mindset of, you got to do your job. And at the end of the day, our job is to deliver outsized returns. And the nice thing is I can be a beacon. Latest company we announced was ScorePlay. That was a seed investment that my partner Christina sourced, led, and won. I got on one call during the conversation. She's not even a sports fan. It's sports tech. And I own a couple of sports teams. I'm obviously pretty well connected to sports. But it wasn't an Alexis deal. It wasn't an Alexis pitch. I was a little bit of icing maybe on that cake, but she won that. And that competitive deal being won by her, especially the fact that she's not a sports fan, should probably make some folks really question, okay, well, to your point earlier, being a generalist fund that has, strong conviction about, different sectors, different industries, certainly, but just comes from a background of operating. And as long as we have a great network of founders, we can win in sports tech, we can win in space tech, we can win in, AI. It is, I don't know. It's also way more mentally stimulating because you get to just have to get smart about a lot of things quickly. And then I'll say the last thing too. I don't know how many firms do this. We have every employee gets carry. And why? Well, because again, the only way you're building $1 billion business is if every single person at the company to the newest admin is incentivized. And you start to see this ripple effect where just by having everyone bought in and caring and feeling like there's upside, it makes everything better. It means the CRM is a little cleaner. It means the response time is a little faster. It means, interacting with the founder is a little bit better. There's a lot of things that we can learn when a team is properly incentivized. And so how do you incentivize people to create that environment? And look, we're only 3 years in. So what the hell do I know? We'll do a follow-up interview in 7 more years and we'll see how it's gone.
Yeah, but you've you figured out quite a bit so far. You mentioned pre-seed to Series A. What do you think about the accelerator market? Is that a game that YC has won, and thus you didn't really consider doing something there, or how do you think about sort of the accelerator landscape in end of 2023 here?
No comment. No, I think it is. I've been on both sides, right? I think early on, probably for the first 10 years of YC, it was an intelligence test, right? 2005 to probably the mid-teens. And what's so interesting now is I don't think I don't know if the accelerator model, because it hasn't changed much since 2005, is the right model for most companies in 2023. And there's a bunch of factors in there, but like the bottom line is I remember, we got $12,000 from YC in 05 for Reddit. I raised another 60 grand at demo day. It was a different time. That was a good raise back then, by the way. And part of why YC was so important was because there was just no knowledge about how to do a startup, especially like a modern startup, because it was such a wasteland. And there were, I made tremendous mistakes as a first-time CEO, but I still made fewer than if I didn't have YC. But by comparison, the 21-year-old first-time CEO who graduates from UVA in 2023, she is so much better equipped than I was, so much, just because of how much is so much more mainstream in terms of startup culture and how much you can just self-serve from smart people on the internet. Like there's just, especially for pure software, there's just so much there. And then I think you just have to go back to asking that hard question of why. And I don't know if the maths anymore for a lot of companies to do that traditional accelerator. And I've heard, I know all the talking points, but I do think we're due for another iteration. I don't know what it is, but it's just the math doesn't math for a lot of the exact founders you would want who are going to build billion-dollar companies today as it used to back in the day. And that's not just YC, that's across the board. It's going to take asking that question why enough times to really get to like, why should someone really want to do this? It is a hell of a time, though, to try to come up with what's next, because the time is definitely now for it. And certainly with the secular shift that AI has brought on, we'll be able to build an app in our sleep in no time.
Totally. It is the dream if you can figure out a way to at scale get special economics and have a Coinbase every year, or and trust that you're getting amazing founders. I mean, it's almost like a can't lose profit just business model. But the market has gotten more efficient, and founders don't need it in the same way. So you have to find undiscovered founders, and that's why I think YC has gone internationally in many ways. But yeah.
Oh yeah. And I've said for a while now, if I could just invest in the YC international batches of the last decade, I'm sure you would have made a ton of money. Because it was that beacon in startup communities that just didn't have that. But then what's the next? Again, it's even that is starting to now not be enough of an edge. I don't know, it'd be interesting. Like I said, it's not going away overnight, but there's absolutely a room to innovate. Maybe that's what you're going to do. I mean, Village was a version of that.
Yeah, we tried our own model and had some success with it, but didn't quite make a structural dent in the ecosystem. With On Deck, I appreciate the pre-company.
What'd you learn from it?
Yeah, a few things. So one is I think the pre-company is the way to compete. YC gone sort of up market. They used to maybe take people who were just talented in idea, but as they got so competitive, they can now have the luxury of waiting. And sort of the in-between phase before people have a company idea, or maybe even before they've left their job, if you can add a lot of value there, maybe help them find a co-founder, maybe help them find their idea, or just create sort of a supportive community that helps them, sort of leave their company. So things like what South Park Commons is doing, the negative one space, I think is the place to play. And the question is basically that I haven't figured out yet is how do you get paid for the risk you take? Because you're going earlier and there's more risk. And so and maybe that leads to incubations like what you're thinking about in a more narrowly scoped way. So those are the ideas I'm wrestling with.
I think you're right.
One question I have is, have you figured out a way to use software to get an edge as it relates to sourcing or evaluating? Certainly you have on supporting. I'm curious if you or anyone has figured that out, or if that's possible.
It's at early stage. I mean, right, there's no data on the companies, or very, very little, because they've only been around. Some don't even exist yet. Others, you got maybe a few months worth of data, 6 months, maybe a year, but then you're also wondering what's taken so long. Like there's no data. And then if you are looking at data, I would just be so reluctant I don't know. I mean, what are you doing? You're looking at where they worked and what college they went to. Like, that's dumb. So I'm very skeptical on using software to be this magic wand. Yeah, it's helpful at later stage, sure, but I skeptical about it on early. The way that we'll go about doing it is through our network, which I know still opens up problems. Like, part of what I hope we can do is we're using software at the heart of this is to start discovering nodes in the network that we wouldn't have otherwise known about. Because we actually know like who have been the most helpful people in our network because we track them. We actually have a thing in every note you can do /thanks to give someone flowers. And that's if, anyone goes above and beyond, for it could be a caterer that gives us a bunch of free tacos. It could be a founder that introduces us to another amazing founder. We also know where we get introduced and all that stuff. But like, we really wanted to create a culture of gratitude where we can start to understand like who is really helping us out. And the next version of that is to then understand of people who are high signal, like who would they recommend? Who are people who are not in our network that they should know or that we should know that they know? And then, we create an event where they get to bring their +1 and it's some person who, we don't know that they think we should know. And there's some, again, it's all software underpins, even the invites that go out and the acceptance rates and tracks all this stuff in one place. I want to start to be able to map out the network so that over time, maybe we can get a little smarter, about how we're sourcing folks. But right now we're just very fortunate because there's just a ton of great founders who happen to want to meet with us. And, we haven't had to hunt, let's say, like a lot of other folks do. But that's good. I don't want my team taking random pitch meetings with founders that waste the founders' time.
Yeah. And so gearing towards closing here, it seems like your early success means you'll have your pick for what strategy you look at. But we've seen firms like Benchmark and USV stick to a fund size and a strategy and just rinse and repeat. And we've seen firms like Thrive and A6Z and others say, hey, let's actually step up. There's more and more great companies every year. Let's do increased AUM and be more ambitious in that way. Obviously, they're both ambitious in terms of return profiles. When you look at Fund 5, let's say, or just the future of 776, what do you think it could look like from a fund size perspective? Or do you think you'll go outside of pre-seed to A? Or what do you think is the future for 776?
Erik, I love DPI. Once you've had a taste of that juice, you don't want to give it up.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of what we saw was a byproduct of ZIRP, the zero interest rate phenomenon. And I don't know if the maths in the same way, right? A larger fund size just means higher bar to make lots of money, right? And I want everyone on the team aligned with one goal, which is DPI. And to that end, we have a sweet spot right now of our core fund is around 400. And I think for early stage, reserving half, for follow on, I want to believe that's in the neighborhood of where we're at a few years from now. But I do think there's other opportunity through different fund types that are complementary, that are also not a growth fund, to be clear. But there's some other interesting stuff, right? You talked about incubation. Like, if there were a way to do, the incubator accelerator model intelligently, I think you'd have to first, I think you'd have to figure out also just the optics of, well, are you doing every company? If you're not doing every company, why are you not? And so then if you're not, which is probably the most equitable one, you'd probably want it to be a separate fund vehicle, so that it just stands on its own and it's got its own thing. Anyway, there's this, like, I wouldn't rule it out. I just don't want to be on here 10 years from now and you'll be like, aha. But generally speaking, I think for early stage in the next 5-6 years, it will be very hard to grow to the scale that we saw before. Because in this interest rate environment, in this environment, I don't know how the maths. Founders Fund did a really impressive thing. We share a couple LPs with them. And when we heard the news, it's public now, that they were giving back money on that like $1.5 billion early stage fund, we're not quite giving it back, but saying, hey, we're going to reduce this fund size. You can, this money will go elsewhere. That was really great. Like that was a sober, smart move because a lot of us were looking around going, how in the hell do you have $1 billion early stage fund? Even if, let's say you reserve half of it, you're really putting $500 million to work in early stage companies. You're trying to buy 10%. Like how big are those rounds? And like, I mean, how do you build a fund returning profile in early stage with that, let alone manage it and everything else? So I'm glad that sobriety kicked in. I don't see that changing over the coming, decade.
Yeah. No, that maybe it's a great place to wrap. We're at the hour. Alexis, I really appreciate not just how you're innovating with 776, but how you're sharing it with the public or sharing with other investors listening in, because you could keep all these secrets to yourself, but it's better for the industry if everyone's innovating and pushing the ball forward. So thank you for coming on and sharing your lessons with us.
My pleasure, man. Dude, Erik, I've had GPs at all the tier 1 firms you talked about earlier call me up. They're like, let's get on a Zoom. I want you to talk to my product team. I want you to show us what you're building in Cerebro. Like I'm an open book, and it's, again, we're a 3-year-old firm. We haven't done jack shit yet, but the fact that the baddest in the industry are like, hey, we want to learn from you is a good sign. And like I said, I don't think I have all the answers. I think we're fortunate to be doing it in a different way at the perfect time. And so we get to come at this with fresh eyes. And I know the space just needs innovation, man. I mean, you come over here. This is why I try to talk young people out of becoming like VCs or joining VC firms until they've like done some stuff and built some stuff, because this space is no longer going to be an early retirement job. And that's exhilarating for the folks who are hungry and want it. And it should be terrifying for the folks who don't. But hey, that's good. The free market's a beautiful thing when it works like that.
Amen. Great place to know. Thanks so much, Alexis.
Thanks, Erik. Thanks for having me, man.
Turpentine VC is a podcast from Turpentine, the network behind Moment of Zen and Econ 102. If you liked the episode, please leave a review in the Apple Store or rate us on Spotify.